Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of Pick Bryan's Brain. Today we have some special guests here. These are members of the Taming the Wild training team. And here at Taming the Wild, we are about using a methodology that is eons old. Nothing that we created, but one that nature created. So today we're going to be discussing which methodology is best, or is there a best? All positive or balanced is what we like to refer to it. But before we get to that, I have a couple questions I need to answer real quick that were sent in to us during the last 2 weeks. And by the way, I certainly hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I know I did, and certainly shared some good time with our families. And of course, like everyone, probably ate a little too much and drank a little bit too much. But I'm all recovered from it, so let's get started right off the bat. Had a question from Nikki. Nikki writes in, and Nikki has a special situation, but it's not one that we haven't heard before. And unfortunately, it's not one that we're not going to ever hear again. This is about maintaining a peaceful coexistence within your household when you own multiple dogs. I own 4 dogs and 2 cats, and the cat, Frank, keeps everybody under control. So I don't have to worry about anything. But set aside that, we have issues in which we have multiple dogs in our family. And we have to kind of keep in mind, these are indeed dogs. Dogs. It's difficult to make 4, 5, 6 humans get along, let alone dogs, who have a different way of dealing with competitive situations or self-defense situations or flat out territorial. Nikki has a situation where she owns 6 dogs. She has 4 Boston Terriers. Oh my goodness, that in and of itself, holy moly. Boston Terriers, I love them, but man, they are just nothing but pure energy. Pure energy. I remember one time I had one bite a sock. It was just a rolled up sock. You could literally carry that Boston Terrier all around the house, anywhere you want to go, and he just hang there and had the best time of his life. So she has 4 Boston Terriers. She also has 2 Pit Bulls. Now, for the most part, most of them get along. But then there's an issue between 2 of them. One is named Apollo, and the other one named is Bilbo. Now Bilbo, I don't know much about him, but I do know enough about canine pharmacotherapy, and that's what I really specialize in. Bilbo is on trazodone, and trazodone is a serotonin agonist reuptake inhibitor. It has a bit of a sedative in it, and many times it is used for dogs for typically, or in most cases, for situational use. Meaning I have to go to the vet and I need something to keep me a little bit calm. I'm going on a long trip. I might have to fly in a plane. We have construction work going on at the house. Sometimes it can be given all day long as an AM, PM, more of a preventive and less of a as needed intervention. But trazodone does work. It is a workhorse medication. It's one that I use quite often to help dogs and keep them in what we call the arousal zone, so they don't hit their red zone, which is their fight or flight level of emotions. And we really want to avoid that, and I've talked about that in the past. So Bilbo is on trazodone. So just taking that on surface, I'd have to assume, Nikki, that Bilbo is definitely anxious, which means Bilbo is going to be a little bit more reactive, going to give a little less grace, a little more fearful, just right off the bat. And then we have Apollo. Now, according to Nikki, Apollo appears to be the antagonist in most of these situations. She says in recent fights between Apollo and Bilbo, Bilbo has always been a timid dog, but a couple months ago, Apollo went after Bilbo, and the fight went too far, and Bilbo's eye almost had to be removed. Now, that's a pretty serious fight. Now, whenever Bilbo sees Apollo, he goes after him immediately, and the fight doesn't end until I can finally break it up, and there's blood everywhere. So now Bilbo has adopted a shoot first, ask questions later mentality. In other words, if you even look at me like you're going to attack me, then the best defense is a good offense. And now we have that going on. I can usually surmise from this, just from the names and knowing the characters of these names in literature and movies and so on and so forth, that they're both male dogs. And I'd probably have to guess that they're both probably about the same size, maybe a little bit bigger for the Pit Bull versus the Boston Terrier. But either way, we have a condition called the principle of resemblance. And that's what it is, meaning if I look at you, you look back at me, and you're close to my size, you're close to my age, you're definitely my gender, then that makes immediate condition, creates an immediate condition of competitiveness. In other words, in which Bilbo is interpreted by Apollo as a possible threat or an opponent. And just so you know, all aggression has some defense to it, meaning even if Apollo perceives Bilbo as an opponent, he's still a threat. Because why? When you have an opponent, unless you have them squarely under your thumb, all the way under your thumb, then that means they're a threat. That means they're capable of still coming back at you. She goes on the right, the vet suggested I rehome Apollo, and that's really not something I'm comfortable with or I'm happy about doing. She told me the fighting will never stop and Apollo will be better off as a single dog. Now, when it comes to behavior, for the most part, I hate to put absolutes on anything. Structured bookends that are immovable. So therefore, I don't know if I'd say it would never stop. I think what we have to look at here is, again, I always try to take my model from nature. What does nature do when there is a principle of resemblance condition? She disperses. That's what she does. She does her own model of rehoming. Rehoming. I've written before, I've said before, when you go to a zoo, you are not looking at a mirror of nature. Why? Because they cannot disperse. Anytime you have social mammals that cannot disperse, you're going to have problems. And nature knew this a long time ago. Imagine yourself living with a bunch of people, and someone in there just keeps picking fights with you daily, every day. Every time you look across the room, you're worried about this person. You're worried they're going to attack you. And you can't leave. You're stuck there. Not a real high quality of life for either Apollo or Bilbo. And she even goes on to write that she's taking what I call zookeeper measures. Zookeeper. And that's what we have to do. I don't care who you are. My wife Kira put out a video yesterday about how we're able to manage having a full-blown sled pulling type husky puppy in our house. We're zookeepers. We really are. And everyone has to be that. When we use this leash, I'm a zookeeper. When I put a dog in a crate, I'm a zookeeper. Good, responsible pet ownership requires some zookeeping. But then we start to cross a little bit of a threshold here. In this particular situation, Bilbo is gated half of the day and one half of the house, while Apollo is out with the other 4 dogs, still bullying them, she writes. And we crate Apollo to give Bilbo some time with the family and pack. But however, when we put Apollo behind the gates, he jumps them. So unfortunately, Bilbo is the one who's sequestered away the most. My answer is not a happy one for you, Nikki. I don't know everything. I can only go by what you've sent in. But let me kind of just tell you, I need you, like I do with every single question I answer. Always start off. Where's your baseline in answering it? The perception of the dog. Not yours, theirs. Don't force a square peg through a round hole. This is dangerous. Dangerous. Bilbo almost lost his eye. And what happens next? What happens when some human tries to intervene and break it up, and all of a sudden we have an artery that's nicked? We have a vein that is severed. We have a tendon that has been pulled out, and the Achilles tendon, and so on and so forth. I'm saying these because I've seen them. Because I've interviewed them and I've written about them. 50% of the fatalities that occur in this country occur from the family dog. I want you to think about what it would be like to either be Apollo or Bilbo. And if you can do that, then the responsible thing to do, even though it's not the happy thing to do, it's really sad and it's called a difficult decision, would be to rehome one or the other, or possibly even both. I've been there, Nikki. I've been there over 7 times in my own personal life. It's never easy, but it's always correct based upon what you wrote to me. So hey, this time the veterinarian was correct. Hoo-yah, way to go. Sorry, I wish I could give you better news, but I think that's what needs to be done. So if you have any more questions about that, Nikki, you can find me here at Taming the Wild. I'll be glad to pick up the phone, glad to hook up my big old machine back there. You hook up your computer, we'll talk about it. I'll look through my screen, take a look at them, see what we can do to see if we can change this. But from what you send in to me, it's rehoming time. And I really hate to say that to you, but it's what needs to be done. Okay guys, we're gonna move on here. I wanna talk today, today's really important because there's an issue here in this country. Welcome to America. It's called free enterprise. Free enterprise, which you have the ability to run a business, to be a professional in the business, to sell your services, to sell your goods. However, there's an underlying issue with that in the realm of professional dog training. And that issue is this. There's been so much time in the last 5 years, especially the last 5 years, so much time, so much hate, so much energy devoted to I'm right, you're wrong. There's no middle ground. And what I'm talking about is an all positive methodology versus a balanced in which the training and the ownership of the dog is not always all positive. And the two clash back and forth, and the two bring up their little research papers, which have been conducted in controlled environments and not tested in the field. And if they do research, anyone can create research. I can, you can, that will absolutely give me the results I'm looking for. In other words, I don't know how much value we place on some research. I think it would be better if we placed more value on our own instinct, on our own ability to reason, on our own ability to observe the world around us and take into account that dogs happen to occupy some of that space. Now, how did an all positive methodology appear? Because it wasn't there first. It was not there first. It was born, my opinion, and again, my opinion is based upon 4 decades. And so I didn't just start this last night. 4 decades of being in front of thousands upon thousands of clients, phone calls, interviews, collaborative work with many scientists, many of the top leading experts in behavior. It wasn't born out of nothing. It was born out of a need. A need. The pet industry, especially professional dog training, is, I've stated it before and I'll state it again, there is no national accreditation. There is no overseeing committee or governing body that watches the conduct of professional trainers and ensures that they have a certain level of qualifications before they can practice their art. Because of that, it now leaves room for anyone and everyone who thinks they can train a dog to do so. And what that has done in turn over the years, it has saturated the market. Saturated it. Everywhere you look, there's a dog trainer. Everywhere. The veterinary field is starting to feel that pressure as well. A mere 30 years ago, I didn't know of any veterinarians that did boarding and daycare. But now they do. Many of them do. Now veterinarians are also doing dog training. They used to never do that. Why? Because there's now so many veterinarians that the pressure's on. And whenever that happens, you try to carve out your own little space. Again, kind of like being in a crowded elevator, throwing a couple elbows and saying, hey, I need my space here. You try to create an eco niche that works for you, a niche that works for you. That's what you want. You want to stand out. I talk about it in signals. If you want a signal to be distinct, You have to do many things. Stereotype it, increase the intensity of it, or make it complex so it stands out from all other signals. And that's how this thing was born. Meaning I simply had the need to carve out my own space, and the best way to get that done was to be different. And then once that started, then all of a sudden, here we go. Let's bring in research to support my claims. But the research was based upon that claim, meaning it didn't just stumble upon it. The research didn't come first. The methodology came first. Okay, so that's how it got started. So I just want to bring up a couple points, and I actually wrote them down today because I'm one of these guys that kind of like a hunting dog. I get on the trail, and I'm good to go till I pick up another trail. And then all of a sudden, I head down that trail, and I get lost. And I got to try and find my way back to the hunter. So I wrote a few little cue cards today, and I'm going to kind of cover a couple points and make sure we stay on the first trail that we were on, stay on point. First one I want to talk about, why all the fuss? Why is there so much time and energy being spent on all positive versus balanced? Let me say one thing right off the bat. Well, we shouldn't even be calling it that. There's nothing all positive about the world. There's nothing all positive about dog relationships or human relationships. The very second you say no, or push the animal off of you, or say bad boy, bad girl, phooey. The first time you ever do that, the first time you ever pull on the leash when the dog's will is to go that way, first time you say quiet, first time you yell at the dog for going potty in your house. This list goes on and on and on. If you ever do any of those, if you ever, then you are by definition not all positive. So why don't we just stop it? Stop right now. Call it what it really is. Go ahead and say it's mostly positive, partly positive. A good deal of the time it's positive, hardly any negative. Give a description that is accurate, because otherwise all you're doing is misleading dog owners. You're misleading them, which sets them up for failure because they come in with these expectations that's all going to be great. It's going to be some sort of dog nirvana. And that's not how it works. And if you practice this, you know it. You know it. I am calling you out. If you do all positive training, you don't do it with your own dog. I've been there, I've snuck into the seminars, I've been undercover, I've walked into PetSmart, I've walked into Petco, I've observed their classes, and here it is. Off, then treat. That's not all positive. But maybe it is mostly positive. So again, guys, quit the misleading. Let's just be truthful, let's be accurate about it, and let's don't mislead the public. Because I'm going to tell you something. My observation has been that most of the public can't handle the truth. They really can. They're pretty good at it. They just want to be told the truth. They want to be as accurate as possible. Then let them make their own decision as to how they want to train their dog. So let's just stop that. Let's stop this right today. I would like to call a summit with everyone, all positive, balanced, whatever. Let's get together, get behind closed doors, and let's come up with some accurate descriptions that will benefit dog owners, not wage some sort of war. Because at the end of the day, it's up to the dog's owner, not you, not me. It's up to them. But I want to talk about that point later because that can lead you down to a little bit of a dangerous road. So number one, let's don't be misleading. Number two, suffering. I just wrote a blog, and the title of the blog is The Master Teacher. You know who I'm talking about? I'm talking about life. Life. Life is the master teacher. She teaches you lessons that you weren't even the least bit prepared for. And part of those lessons includes some suffering. Your existence on this planet is not all positive. And it's not all positive for dogs. Suffering comes with life. It's unavoidable. I've written before, get comfortable being uncomfortable. because that's the way it is. Reason being, the master teacher came up with an incredible lesson plan. She said suffering creates the need, develops problems, actually suffering develops problems, and then generates the need for solving those problems, which means you have to figure it out. And from doing so, you learn. And when you learn, you don't revisit the suffering again, if you're smart. Now, many times in my own life, I have suffered. And I know you have suffered. And your family has suffered. And your children have suffered. If you are religious, it does not matter what religion you study or what religion you worship, the deity in that religion suffered. Why? Why did they suffer when obviously they had the capability of not suffering? Because it just happens. Suffering is universal. And it also is a wonderful model for teaching. When we overcome something, we learn. And when we learn, we're able to be more productive in the future. We're smarter. We're able to perpetuate our species because we're not getting killed off from our stupidity. We learn. We learn. I've had many close calls in my life. I didn't pack a chute properly one time, and the main chute didn't open. So I had to do a cutaway and open up my reserve chute. The problem is, I opened it up about 300 feet too close to the earth. So needless to say, it was almost like something out of watching the old Roadrunner cartoons. Open goes the chute, and right then, I smacked the roof on top of a barracks. And I roll off the other end. But I learned. I learned from that. I got a second chance. I suffered, but I learned. I've also been bitten many times. I haven't been bitten again lately because I learned. So again, suffering is fine. Sometimes you suffer a little, sometimes you suffer a lot. In part of dog training, we have to give them problems, and problems in which they may suffer a little bit, meaning I really want to get up and go after that squirrel, but I can't. I really want to pull Bryan up the side of a mountain and over the edge of a cliff, but I can't. I really want to go chase that ball, but he won't let me. So therefore, suffering is just part of it. And suffering means we don't do all positive. Just get comfortable with it. It's part of life, baby. No issue, no big deal. Let's move on from it. All right, and then lastly, when it comes to a training methodology, whether you choose to do something called mostly positive or something that will create, in most cases, a little bit more reliability, I think it depends mostly upon what is your want, what is your need. And there is a difference in the two. You want some things, but you need others. I may want a shiny red Ferrari, but I don't need it. I have an older Jeep that gets me from point A to point B and actually does a lot better off-road than a Ferrari would. But I think it'd still be cool to ride around in one. But again, so we've done this our whole life. We've always asked, what do we want, but what do we really need? And I think we all as dog owners need to ask ourselves that question. What do I want from my dog? What do I need from my dog? And now I'm going to sound like your parents. Get the need taken care of first. Then get to your want. Kind of like the old Mark Twain quote. If it's your job to eat a frog, eat it first thing in the morning. And if it's your job to eat two, swallow the biggest one first. That's how it is. Accomplish your needs and use a training methodology that helps you do that. How does it do that? If you, for example, want your dog to do tricks, then, and it doesn't matter whether they do them or not, then I would say, why would I have to use anything other than treats and all positive? Why? I really don't care. It's a want. However, for me, when I call my dog, that's a need. I need that to happen. As far as housebreaking goes, I really need them to go outside because there's 4 of them and I walk around barefoot a lot. I really need some behaviors from my dog. I need them to not bite people. I need them to walk perfectly on a leash with me. I need those things. Those aren't just wants. If I'm going to own you, you're supposed to lower my blood pressure and not raise it. You're not supposed to get me sued by some personal injury attorney. I need those things. So therefore, for me personally, an all positive approach didn't work because I had to throw in the old cost versus benefit. Otherwise, there's no cost, just benefit. And therefore, the dog decides what behavior I want to do to achieve the benefit. However, if there's a cost, okay, well, the cost can override the benefit. It definitely can, and sometimes it has to have control. When you read in my blog, The Master Teacher, you read a sad story about a woman with a German Shepherd. Really, really sad. And that's only one of hundreds that I could have written. One of hundreds. And this is a story about a woman who refused to use anything other than all positive to try and control her dog. As you read the story, that's not what her dog used. Dog didn't use all positive. And therefore, I used to write, and I have written, that we all get the dog we deserve. Until I was attacked by your dog. In other words, I got the dog I didn't deserve because you couldn't control your dog, because you didn't have the will to actually make your dog do something. Make them do it. And if you wish to not do that and keep your dog at your home under lock and key, then make sure it's a strong lock and key. Because over 19,000 service workers in the year 2017, delivery people, were bitten by dogs to a point that they had to seek emergency medical treatment. And they weren't attacked by their dog. It was the dogs belonging to the people of the household that they were delivering their packages to. So they got the dog they didn't deserve. Guys, we have to control our dogs. So again, one of those needs is control. So that I don't inherit your desire to not control your dog. Keep it to yourself. Keep it to yourself. And unfortunately, the lady in my blog did. And she paid a price for that. So again, want versus need. Now I want to kind of show you a neat little thing here. I've got my little cattle dog in here. His name is Captain. And I'm going to show you a want. I wanted him to do a couple of neat little tricks. And I'm going to have Joshua help me with these. Reason being, I'm wearing a little mic right here. And one of the tricks I taught Captain to do is to jump into my arms. It's way cool. But if he jumps on me right now and we're in this mic, you guys are all going to go, oh my God, I can't believe he did that. So I'm going to let Joshua do it. But we'll show you a cool little trick here. So again, this is a want, it's not a need. And this was done through an all positive approach. Is Joshua in the frame? Okay, Joshua, call Captain to you.
Captain, come.
Now that was a need. That was a need. Okay, let's turn around here. He wants to come to me. I'm his natural owner. So Joshua, turn around. And here, I'm going to give Joshua a treat so that Captain will pay attention to him. I'm going to kind of step a little bit out of the frame here.
Captain, come. Captain, come. Good, good. Give me up.
There we go. Okay. Let's see if we can jump a little higher than that.
Captain, come. There we go. Good boy. I didn't give you the treat, did I? Oh.
He wants the treat.
Give me up. Oh.
There we go. All right, and now one that I can do with him is down, roll over, attaboy, good job, breathe, and there we go. So again, just a lot of fun. That's just fun, guys. It's just a lot of fun. And there was never ever a correction given to Captain for not jumping into our arms. I will tell you though, there were a few times in which he was corrected for jumping into my arms prematurely. The ability to jump into my arms was created from a complex signal. When I talked a while ago, how do you want to make a signal distinct? One of those is complex. So in other words, his permission to jump up into my arms required me to look at him, visual. Say the words, give me a hug, auditory. And then a second visual, spreading my arms. Now what that did for me was create reliability in his response. Otherwise, I live down in Harbor Town on an island, and a lot of tugs go by. So as you can imagine, one day I might go, hey, check out that tug, and now there's a 55-pound cattle dog skyrocketing to my nose. Don't want that to happen. So there was a little bit of balanced training applied to this to make sure that he only did this really fun thing, really cool thing, reliably and upon a complex signal. So again, guys, if you want to teach dog tricks, it's your dog. Just make sure it's your dog. Make sure other people don't inherit your dog if your dog is out of control. And I think that's what we need to look at for all positive, or I'm going to quit even saying those words. I'm going to use the words mostly positive versus a nice balanced system. And when I say balanced, that means, hey, yeah, we dump in that positive stuff. I walk around with a treat bag, not because it looks cool, because they actually have treats in them. But I also tell the dog, you must do what I tell you to do. It is my will, and my will is law. It's how it has to be. Okay? Not being a bully, not being a dictator, just being real and being natural. All right, well, sitting here next to me, like I said, are members of our team. This is Joshua, and this is Ashley, and here's Jamie. And the reason why they're here is because they have their own stories. They have their own backgrounds. Both Jamie and Ashley both worked for Petco. Now, we know Petco. I don't have to tell you, this is the absolute truth. I can turn it on my board over there. They advertise to the world that they do all positive training. All positive. I've been there. I've watched it. Now, one time I happened to go in there with my Taming the Wild t-shirt on, and they kicked me out. But when I went in there without it, I was able to observe some of the classes. I think one of my issues is, and they'll definitely bring it up as well, is I've always had a problem with people who straddle the fence. Either get over the side of the fence on one side or the other, but don't straddle it. Actually stand for something. Actually believe in something. I would be more happy being with someone who believed completely in the wrong thing than someone who straddles the darn fence. If they're believing the completely wrong thing, that means that person has passion, they have a desire to grasp a hold of something, and hey, I can work with that. Same thing with the dog. But my issue where I was going with that is that same company who advertises we do all positive training, go shopping there sometimes. I don't know if they have an aisle number, but I do know this. Hanging on some of those aisles are prong collars, choke collars, and in a glass case under lock and key are remote training collars. And we won't call those shock collars. So again, wow. So what's up with that? How come you do this all positive training, but you sell those pieces of equipment? Is a dollar that important to you? I don't understand that. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and let Joshua introduce himself. He'll start off, and then we'll move our way through there. I really think that you should hear their story some, because it's really fascinating. It's really neat to get other people in this field and find out why they're here. Why are these two still not at Petco? Why is Joshua here? So again, here we go. This is Joshua. I'll let him talk.
Hi guys. My story is a pretty long one, but I'll make it short so everybody else has time to talk. But I have been dog obsessed my entire life. It wasn't actually the dog training aspect that I got interested in until just maybe a short 7-8 years ago. I was deprived of having a dog in my entire life until I was about 14 years old, and I raised the dog. Is basically what it was. It's just the mastery of raising a dog. I didn't really put any type of formal training to it. You could call it, I guess, a natural approach. You know, I analyzed the dog, I analyzed other dogs, how they communicated to each other, and I tried to apply that to my dog. It definitely had its flaws. It definitely wasn't the full package. It wasn't until I kind of moved out into the world, moved away from home, met other people who had issues with their dogs, and I go, really? I didn't realize that dog training was an actual industry. I thought it was something for Hollywood, people you know, training dogs for movie sets and things like that. And at the time I was actually going to school for graphic design. And then I realized, holy cow, I can make some money doing this thing. And I kind of just started helping people for free, just for my own experience at apartment complexes and things like that, and really started making a difference. So then I kind of got into the whole kind of structured training methodologies. And when you go to the internet and you look for that, one of the first things that pops up is positive dog training. And so the pendulum kind of swung to the other side, and I really started implementing all positive training. I don't think you even knew that about me, did you?
No, I didn't know that about that. So Josh and I will be talking as soon as Facebook Live is over here. So I did not know about that.
So yeah, so it was short-lived because I started reading and all these really credible people like Victoria Stilwell, which we know now is not so credible. She never owned a dog her entire life until she started her show, by the way. But anyways, yeah, so I started implementing it, and I had really wonderful results. I had started training my dog to do things that I never dreamed. I had a very practical mindset as far as what I required from my dog, which was, hey, when I tell you to stay, I need you to stay. When I tell you to come, I need you to come. And that was it. And then we went out on walks, we went on hikes, and we had a practical relationship. It wasn't until I started looking at the positive training that I actually started teaching my dog how to shake, teaching my dog how to roll over, teaching my dog actual proper sits and downs and all these fun tricks to play with. And I got wonderful results until I went outside, until I was around other distractions. And then I realized, oh, I get it. The reliability comes with what I used to do, and all of the precision work comes with the positive training, the reinforcement, the telling the dog you did a good job. So then I realized, oh, I've been practicing two halves of the same equation, and then I applied them together. And I think that we can probably all agree here that we're all, if we had a methodology that we could look at and it said, the evidence was there to say that this is the absolute best way to train your dog, we would all be for it. We're not pro correcting your dog or punishing your dog. We're pro reliability. We're pro proper companionship with your dog. So it's not like we're here advocating punishment. Right. We are in a way, but if somebody shows us evidence that we're wrong, we're not afraid to change our views. And I think that's what really needs to be the moment that you put that kind of perspective out there, that you are that, this is the best, this is the only, then you really close your mind off to any type of evolution. I mean, the dog training industry is evolving constantly, and if you're not open for that, then you're going to be left behind by everybody else.
Yeah, I agree. And just so you know as well, like Joshua, when I was a kid, I didn't know there were professional dog trainers. They certainly, if there were any in Alaska, I didn't know about it. Now, there were men up there and women who could train sled dogs to do amazing things, and thank God they were around for me, because otherwise I would have never been able to even compete as a junior musher. So again, I grew up the same way. One of the things that strikes, that I heard Joshua say that really strikes home with me was when he was young. Tell me a little bit more about what did you see? You said that you started by observing dogs, how dogs interacted, because that's how I started, mostly with wolves and my own sled dogs, and I drew a comparison. I went, wow, they do a lot of the same things. But I didn't know at that time that they had at one point in evolution been the same creature until they hit that evolutionary fork in the road. I didn't know that. I thought they were completely separate. I was a young boy. But I noticed my power observation allowed me to see wolves do one behavior, and my dogs do this exact same thing over and over and over again. And that kind of lit my fire. Tell me about that.
Well, it goes back a ways. I can't remember the dog's name now. Maybe if someone from my family is watching that's a little older than me that has a better memory, they can tell me the dog's name. But there was a St. Bernard that was one of our neighbors, and back when you're young, everything seems twice as big. So I thought that this dog was like a horse to me. If I were to tell a story, I'd say that the dog's paws was this big, and in reality it was probably this big.
Sure.
But I just remember this dog being very friendly to people, very friendly, but it didn't like its paws being touched, because I'd always try to pick the paw up to see if the dog, oh my gosh, it's so big, and he would tuck it away. And I also noticed that different parts of his body would change. And I took note to those things as he went from this kind of loosey-goosey type of happy-go-lucky thing, and keep in mind, I think I was like 3 or 4, so taking notice to these behavior changes. The other thing is I also noticed that dogs didn't give other dogs treats. I noticed that when one dog did something, another dog didn't go pat him on the head and say, "Good job." They only really let them know any type of feedback when they screwed up. And that was a big one for me. And my first dog, Graham, he was just a yellow English lab. And we had this relationship where, dude, we're good. We're going to hang out. I'm going to pet you. You get all this freedom in the world, but you screw up, man, I'm going to let you know very quickly. And it was a very dynamic relationship. Anybody that knew me and my dog, even though I never gave my dog a treat other than just throwing him a piece of chicken when I had some and just saying, "Hey, good job, buddy." But nothing as far as formal training. Nobody could say that, my dog was unhappy, my dog was, scared of me in any way, or he had respect for me. He wanted nothing but to be around me. But as far as other dogs that I've met, I remember there was one dog I named Lucky. He was a stray golden retriever. This is probably one of the worst spankings I've ever gotten, by the way. There was a dog.
Your parents didn't use all positive?
No, they didn't. There's a stray dog that I named Lucky, and at the time I wasn't allowed to have a dog. I had a parent that kind of thought dogs were gross and disgusting and couldn't really have one. So I kind of secretly fed this one dog hot dogs outside and like, "Dude, this is where you can come and eat. Like, you hang out here." And I put up a huge fight not to go to the store with my family because I was afraid the dog was going to leave. And sure enough, I came back, the dog was gone. Well, it was probably later that night, probably 4 or 5, 6 hours later, the dog was down the road and I saw it, and it's in the middle of the road and cars are going, and I'm young, keep in mind, and I take off after it, and next thing I know, my mom has me by the arm with a fly swatter, swatting me the whole way back to the house. So, that was my...
Love you, Mom.
Yeah. And I got off on a tangent. I'm the hunting dog now. But, my whole point about Lucky was at first he was very nervous around me. He didn't want to approach me. He didn't want, and all of the body language and all the understanding of, there was a couple times he actually even growled at me. And I just call it instinct, I guess. I knew to kind of let him be himself for a second and let him figure me out first. And then once he kind of started showing some relaxed signals, then I started reaching my hand out to offer him a hot dog and things like that. And next thing I knew, he was hanging around me. And then all of a sudden, my sister came outside. He was right back to the way he was when I first saw him. And it was just these types of behaviors that I saw, that I started picking up on, that it told me a lot about the dog's state of mind. And I also, just by watching movies and TV and things like, which can be extremely misleading, but understanding that just because a dog may roll on its back, show its belly or something like that, doesn't mean the dog is scared. The dog doesn't hate you 3 seconds after it gets back up on it, the submission aspect, you can say. But as far as just understanding dog behavior and cues and signals of growling, came very natural to me as far as understanding what the dog was trying to communicate to me.
Very good. All right, now we're going to pass the mic. Wake up. She's here. All right, this is Ashley. Ashley, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right, so we've had dogs pretty much my whole life, but we've never really done any sort of formal training. So my first experience with an actual dog trainer was someone we paid $500 to come and see what behavioral issues my little Shih Tzu was having, and all she did was baa at the dog.
She did what?
She baaed. It's like, you need to baa your dog. And I'm like, this lady's crazy. I don't know what's happening. So a couple of years later, go to college, need a part-time job, want something animal related because I love animals, and I find Petco. So I started as a cashier, and then our dog trainer quits, and then, "Do you want to be a dog trainer?" I'm like, "I like dogs, sure, why not?" So I got trained as the dog trainer, and 3 years later I'm running it by myself because I'm the only one there. And I've realized that it's what I wanted to do and good at it. I love it. I like helping the dogs and I like working with the people. So I'm still going through college, but I find exactly what I want to do. The only issue with being where I was, it's what they want you to do. Now, I had gotten my own dog, she just turned 2, but Charlie, and I was able to take stuff I wasn't able to do at Petco and work with her. So they had strict regimen of this is what you teach the dog, this is how you teach it. But with Charlie, I was able to kind of play around a little bit, find different methods of doing things, teach her tricks, and then I would take those things and bring them into my classes. So I didn't have a whole lot of, we had a lot of manager turnover, so I didn't have a lot of people really looking. As long as I was selling classes, no one bothered me. So I was doing what I wanted to do, and I wasn't technically allowed to take any of the difficult cases, so anybody that showed any aggression or any dog that was just really nervous, I would try my best. A lot of it was a lot of sit, stay, focus work, just try to ignore it, but I couldn't really get my hands on difficult dogs. We would have to refer them out. But because no one really was really watching, I was able to play around with like the e-collars. I had to do my own research and learn how to use it myself, but then...
Now, if you don't mind, I'm just going to interrupt and say,
Yes.
E-collar, just for those of you who are listening and going, what is an e-collar? It's a remote training collar, and again, I'm only going to say shock collar because that's what, unfortunately, and I wrote a blog about it, so I'm not going to take up time on it, what people refer them to, but just wanted to point that out there. So go ahead and continue.
Yeah. So I could play around with it. I bought a prong collar. I didn't really know how to use it, so I never really told people to use it. So I never got formal training with these tools that could make everything better for certain dogs. So I kind of worked with what I had, tried the best I could do. But the only issue is if the people at home didn't follow what you were doing, you had no reliability. Even Charlie right now, she could do tricks if I had a treat in my hand. But the second that treat goes away, she's like, I don't really care. So I mean, that's working here gives me different ways of actually proofing those behaviors, allowing her to know I mean business. And you can sit and stay whether you're outside, inside, there's a dog running around, I don't care. Your butt's sitting there. So I like that difference. I like actually being able to hold her accountable for what I tell her to do. And that's just Petco. I was in a box and I wasn't able to go out of that box.
But you wanted to go out of that box.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. What made you feel like you wanted, I mean, down to the root level here, what was inside you? What was something going, this isn't right. I could accomplish so much more. I could have more success with my clients if I could get outside this box. What was it? What made you leave there? In other words, what was happening? Just be honest about it.
Half of the people that came in you couldn't work with, and even if you could, they'd go home and nothing was different. It's yes, if we have a treat we can get them to sit and stay, but you take it outside, it's not working. You're just not seeing the results, and you're not helping people and helping dogs the way you want to. Even though your heart's there, but you're not allowed to take the steps necessary to get where the results you want.
I understand. I've seen it all over the country, and I've met so many people with so many problems with dogs that could be solved by simply just, hey, I love you, dog. Dude, know this. And like Joshua even said, we love dogs. You don't get rich in this business. I don't care who you are. When my wife Kira showed a video yesterday, you got to see the inside of my house, and it didn't take her long to walk from one point to the other point to our college daughter's closet, which, by the way, I think my wife cleaned that up a little bit. It doesn't normally look like that. I'm just going to throw that out there. Anyway, so you do it because you love it, because you got this incredible passion, and you have this passion to help people be happy, to enjoy a dog the way that you know they can enjoy it, to not suffer in that regard. Yeah, there's plenty of room for suffering out there, guys. You don't have to toil and suffer through your dog. And that's why we're here. And Ashley and Joshua have resonated that. Let's go ahead and pass it over to Jamie, because I think Jamie has a pretty similar story with regard to Ashley. So take it away, Jamie.
Well, thank you guys. So my background basically started with dogs I was a freshman at West Virginia University, and we had a program there that mostly trained service dogs on campus. So they got the students in, the students got to take the service dogs class with them, and I used to always see them walking around on campus. Now, who doesn't want to tote around a little golden retriever puppy with you everywhere to class? Now, anybody can agree with that. Yep. So in my 4 years at WVU, I couldn't really figure out how all these people were getting into this program. So my senior year, I finally decided I had a little extra time. Finally decided to take the course and start my service dog, kind of helping out with that, and got to take a few dogs with us to class. Well, it wasn't until the end of my senior year I met a wonderful, wonderful professor named Dr. Stephen Kenzie. And he is the head of the neuroscience department at WVU, and he's a wonderful, wonderful man. And he was trying to help me figure out what I wanted to do with my life, what I wanted to do with my career. And I told him, I was like, well, I've got this dog here. And I'm like, but I'm really, really interested in neuroscience. Really love it. Love talking about the brain. I could talk about it all day long. And he's like, combine the two. I'm like, what do you mean? How do you combine neuroscience and dogs? Why is that a thing? And he's like, just do it. Go ahead, go do it. There's not a whole lot out there. Go ahead. So I started looking into master's programs, what I could do as a student. So I started working towards my master's degree in canine life sciences from Bergen University. So about halfway through that program right now, I graduate in June. But from there, so I started my career at Petco, just trying to get a little bit more experience under my belt, hands-on with the dogs. My biggest issue with Petco is the fact, and we talked about it a little bit, you touched on it a little bit, about how we had all these cases that came in all the time about these dogs who were aggressive, fearful, maladaptive to some degree, and we were not allowed to help them. They came in showing any form of aggression, even if they looked nervous and kind of hid in the corner, which we see it every single day. When a dog gets dropped off for one of our board and train programs, we just had one dropped off, they're a little nervous. They're in a whole new environment. If we got to see a dog, at least in my experience, if we saw a dog like that, you had to tell them they had to leave. And guess what? We had this little chart that we referred them out to, probably a balance trainer who was going to help them with that. Not our mostly positive ways, we're not allowed. But a lot of what Petco preaches is we're saving a life. Is training a dog, and everybody can agree that training a dog is saving a life. But what are we doing for these dogs that can't come to these classes, and they're not allowed to be in these classes, and we're not allowed to save those lives? That to me really hit hard. So that's when I really started looking for a different approach, different kind of methodology, and that's when I found you guys. And that simple being able to actually help people that come in with actual problems, and dogs that are a little bit more difficult, and learning how to help them get through it, kind of power through their feelings, and even dogs that are just a little bit nervous. Even those types of dogs we were never allowed to really help, couldn't save those lives, and that really didn't sit well with me.
It was more about the money.
Yeah.
Sell the classes.
Yeah, and just so you know, guys, this is not a Petco hater group here. We're just using them as one of many examples that could be used. And it's just, as you hear from them, if training, if the basis of it is to ensure that we have a happy, safe coexistence with our pets, then why can't we just open our minds? Open them up. Don't shut the door. Apply balance in our lives. You hear it. They weren't able to help people. They weren't. Now let me ask you, Jamie, because you're right. Dogs thrive on the familiar. They thrive on it. And when they come in for one of our board and train programs, if they've never been here before, they're not familiar with me, Joshua, Ashley, or Jamie, then they're nervous. I don't blame them. You pluck me up, you drop me in the middle of nowhere, I'm a little nervous till I figure my way around and understand where I'm going to eat, where I'm going to sleep, and all those basic survival needs. They are. But we don't turn them away, because we know, being the mammal that they are, the species that they are, they were equipped equipped to flexibly deal with changes in their environment, changes to them. They're not dumb. They're smart. They're really smart. And they were really giving some great tools that we inhibit. We don't allow them to use it. We don't allow them to feel suffering. What's wrong with that? Because here's what's wrong with it. When you have not overcome something, you've not had to deal with it. You've had a life floating around on a marshmallow. Well, again, as I said, suffering is unavoidable. So when it hits you, you have no previous experience to help you get through that moment. You have none. The process of overcoming trials prepares you for greater trials in the future. And because I do a lot of canine pharmacotherapy, I'm dealing with dogs who do not have the ability to overcome many natural and typical external stressors. And I write about that in my blog. Why? Because they were inhibited. Every aspect of their life was controlled by their human owner and made sure everything was just hunky-dory. Rainbows and unicorns. By golly, it's all about the darn dog. You're right, it is. In other words, balance. I love you, but you got to be under control. You know, after all, I do live here too. I have neighbors and everyone else. When these dogs come in that are nervous like that, Jamie, what have you seen? Has the methodology that we practice more of a balanced approach? And when I say balanced, it's not always like this. There are some dogs that come in, it is about 90% positive. It is that mostly positive thing. It really is. It just seems to work for them. But we do have to throw in that 10%. That 10% that says, hey, you're doing great. You're awesome. However, you didn't really come to me the last 2 times I called you. We need to tighten that up just a little bit there. But for the most part, when they do come in and we apply our balanced methodology, what do you see? Are you seeing results from that? Are you seeing dogs that you're able to help now that you felt like you weren't able to help before?
Watching some of the cases that have come in recently, and we've showed them on the Facebook Live, Willie and Scully have been through, and watching them on there, the confidence that they have, even halfway through, Willie's halfway through his program right now, and the confidence that he has to do some of the things, and the fact that currently, yesterday we were playing with him and he wouldn't play his first few days. This is a dog that came in, dog aggressive, wouldn't hardly look at you, and now yesterday he's come out of his shell enough because of the training that we've done. He's come out of his shell enough to play ball.
Around other dogs.
Around other dogs.
Yeah, around other dogs. And if you guys did not see that video that I showed on a Facebook Live, was it the last one, Kira?
There's 2 ago.
Or 2 ago, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. I invite you to check that out. And then I invite you to check out a video that Joshua did this last weekend with Willie. And I saw Willie this morning, and the boy's got a swagger. I mean, it's kind of, sometimes you go, okay, now we've taken it too far. You are way too comfortable. You are way too good. He's got a bit of a swagger, but you know what? It's a lovely thing. It really is. And that's what we see. I love when I take a dog and I change it. And I remember one day we had an employee. I was working with a dog who's in a pharmacotherapy program, but also I use obedience to work with deactivating terrible and dangerous type behaviors, counter conditioning, you name it. And I was really been working with this dog for many months and was really happy with where the dog was progressing. And then one day, an employee walked through the room, saw the dog and went and stared for a second. And then she started to move on. And I stopped her and I go, is there something wrong? She goes, no. There's something different about the dog. I go, yeah, he's a lot better behaved, isn't he? He's pretty cool now, isn't he? She goes, no, that's not it. She goes, there's something in his eyes. There's more light there. There's more happiness. And this is a girl, now she worked here. I love her to death. But I don't even know if she knew at that time which end of the dog you were supposed to pet. She was kind of learning, kind of in training at that moment there. But even she picked that up. So guys, this isn't a wow, way to go, taming the wild pep rally here between the four of us. This is more about sharing with you that these are people who work with dogs. And at one time in their lives, they were forced to, through their job or through their own self-discovery, a more imbalanced approach. And I think that's what we're talking about more than anything. Not all positive, but more of an unbalanced type approach. Again, listen to your own stomach, listen to your own hearts, listen to your own brain. Life requires balance. Agonism holds all social orders together. It's a thread of life. And we didn't make it up. And you didn't make it up either. Again, I think it all boils down to want versus need. And whatever you need, make sure the methodology that you choose can get you from point A to point B. Joshua, you grabbed that mic. Did you have one last thing to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up the story you just told about that dog and kind of seeing some more light in its eyes. That reason right there is why I came up with the methodology that I use today, and it's evolved with trainers that I've worked with and things like that. But if I ever trained a fearful dog and then didn't see that or saw worse than what it came to me, then I would completely question what I was doing. I would completely reconsider my methodology. But the reason I stumbled across where I'm at is because you see that story that you just told over and over and over and over and over again. So that's the last thing I wanted to say about it is that there's reasons that we train the way that we do. It's because we get result after result after result and bettering people's lives, the quality of life.
Amen. All right, guys, I really appreciate you tuning in to this week's edition of Facebook Live. And before we close, by the way, I just want to throw a big shout out here. We've got another training member that's here. She's not sitting on the stool. Her name is Michelle Pierce. Michelle, our clock has to keep running around here. It keeps going. And while we're sitting here talking to you on Facebook Live, I've already watched Michelle walk by our front door about 20 times with about 5 different dogs. And she's out there working with these dogs and applying that balanced approach to those dogs. I'm going to have Michelle on here. She's got a little bit of a different story. I'll probably bring her on next week. Just wanted to let her know that she wasn't being left out of the party here. She's working and we're having a whole lot of fun just here hanging out. So again, thank you, Michelle. All right, guys, if you have any more questions for next week, I want to shout out to my friend Paul. He had a question. I asked him if I could hold off till next week. He wants to talk about dog beds. Oh, I am telling you, that cattle dog that you saw, he loves a bolstered bed. Bolstered. Notice I said that. Don't you dare try to give him something that doesn't have a pillow wrapped around it. He's not going to be happy about that. He has to have a bolstered bed. But he doesn't do it any longer. But there was a day in which if you're going to give him any sort of bed, it better be made out of steel, because he was just going to shred it up and chew it up. So it wasn't just a bed, it was a chew toy. And Paul's got that same kind of condition going on. And so next Facebook Live, we're going to talk about beds, dog beds. Which are best? Which ones promote or nurture a nesting type instinct that our dogs have? Not that they're birds, but they like to snuggle up. A lot of it is defense. A lot of it is survival from heat, backing forth. A lot of things like that. But we'll get more into that. We had a couple more questions come in. I didn't have time today to answer. We will definitely answer those. And we will be showing you some more training. And we're also going to show you Elliot. Remember the dog Elliot that we picked up? And Elliot's going to become a service dog for a girl with cerebral palsy. We're really excited. He's passed all of our evaluation tests. Now his training has begun in earnest, and we're so excited for this thing to just come true, to give someone an animal that will set them free. So a lot of stuff coming down the road, and I just wanted to thank Jamie for being here. I want to thank Ashley. I want to thank Joshua. Guys, I can't get it done by myself. I want to thank all of our good clients out there who support us, and I hope you guys have an incredible and wonderful week. But keep it balanced. Love you guys. See you later.